Hi guys, my name's Steph and I'm a product manager here at Splose. I'm on the AI team, which means today I'm going to be helping you get to know Splose AI. Today's session is going to be really wonderful for our practitioners. We're going to start to look at your clinical workflows and how AI can be incorporated into them. We're going to get stuck into a few things. We're going to start by just introducing the Splose AI features very briefly for those of us that are new here today. And then we're going to get into the good stuff. We're going to spend most of our time talking about your workflows and how AI is going to be used within them. And then we're going to talk a little bit about building confidence. So how can you refine your prompts? How can you achieve a little bit more accuracy and tips and tricks from the trade? So stay tuned for that one. We'll spend a touch of time just talking about security and oversight. And what I mean by that is looking at the role that AI plays versus the role that you play as a clinician. And then we'll spend a touch of time at the end just talking a little bit about the ROI and clinical impact. This one is mostly for our practice owners. But let's start to talk about our Splose AI features so you can see how the puzzle pieces start to fit together. The first feature that I'll talk about is our voice to text AI feature. It is usually the first AI feature that you'll come in contact with when you're sitting down for your session. And effectively what it will do is, as the name suggests, it will take any voice recording and transform that into text. And what that looks like in real terms for you is you can use it to record a session that's taking place, whether that's with just you and the patient, or it might be you, the patient, and their two parents, or whatever it might be, whoever's in the room. You can transcribe that text. You can transcribe the session taking place, and it will give you a transcript of that session. Or I can use the dictate function, and that is essentially I don't want to record the session taking place, and I would prefer to dictate my notes after the fact for whatever reason that might be. We give you the capability to be able to do that. A fun little tip is you can use the transcribe feature, record the session taking place, pause it, and then once I've left, I can then resume it and dictate my notes after if I want to give a little extra context. But that's a nice little additional tip. But effectively what the voice to text does is it provides extra context for our Ask AI feature. Now, this feature is a winner. It is no short that it is our most popular AI feature amongst our feature set. And it is it looks and appears like any other AI chat that you might be familiar with, where I provide it a prompt and it will provide me an answer in a chat-like thread. The benefit of using Splose AI inside Splose is that it has the contextual information about your patient, so it's able to access the rest of the patient history and its details, and you don't have to worry about using a third-party tool to be able to access. It all happens directly inside Splose, which is fantastic. But effectively, it is familiar as such. It's a chat thread, it's easy to use, and it can recall information easily when you ask for it. The primary use of this is usually to create documentation of things like your progress notes or your reports. But you can also use the chat thread to do other things. Things like I'm sitting down with someone that I've not seen in months. Could you just give me a summary of the last few progress notes so that I can be up to speed before I see my patient? And you can use it to do a myriad of things. So think of the Ask Splose AI as an assistant while you're writing your notes. And then you can use it however you choose to wish while you're writing your notes. The next feature I'll spotlight is our email summarize feature. So this happens once you've finalized the progress note and you're getting ready to send it off anywhere. We have a summarize session button, and it is an AI tool which essentially summarizes the note that you've just written. So it's less time actually just writing emails. Who wants to write emails? So the button is there to help you, or for AI to help you write the email copy so you can just get it sent off as fast as possible. Then we have AI in letters. So say you're sitting down to write a referral letter or any letter of any kind, you can use AI to write that. And again, similar to Ask AI in a progress note, in letters it has the contextual information about that patient. So you can use that with all the session history to write the letter. Less time searching through history to write your letter. That's good news to me. And so that's available for you in there. And our latest addition to our AI family is our AI blocks feature. Now, this is again in progress notes. It is a little bit different to the AI chat. The AI chat is quite literally a chat thread and is more of an assistive tool while you're writing your notes, though you can still use it to write your documentation, no problem at all there. But essentially what AI blocks is it comes in at a step before that. So AI blocks are most effectively used when you've added them to the progress note template. And what that means is when you have opened an appointment and you've opened a progress note from that appointment, provided you've got AI blocks inside that template, you can then open the template and your AI prompts will already been there. So you can see it in this little screen recording here that I've got my template structure with my different subheadings, and you'll see the different AI blocks in there. And so it's really good because it keeps it all in line in the document editor. You're not keeping your documentation within an AI chat, and it's essentially embedding AI where it matters inside the document for what you need it for there. And that really is the benefit of just being able to have that ready to go when you open your template for each progress note. So to summarize, these are our current stack of AI features. This is by no means an exhaustive list. We definitely have a lot of cards up our sleeve in the future for what we want to do with AI. But you'll notice it's very heavily skewed toward documentation. These are the ones that are going to be most beneficial for you, and also the ones that we're going to talk about today. So now we get into the good stuff. We start to talk about your clinical workflows. We start to see how the puzzle pieces fit together. Let's get stuck in. All right, so I've gone ahead and opened up a progress note here for my patient, Emily West. I'm going to start by showing you what a full day consult looks like using Splose AI, and so you can start to see how it all comes together. So I've done nothing here except open a progress note. I came in through the calendar and I created a progress note through the service, which is why it's linked here. And I've loaded a template that I wanted to select, and that's now come up here on the left. I've obviously got AI, which is why my right-hand panel is looking a little like this, which means I've got all the AI features ready for me to use. I am going to start by saying I've not seen Emily in a few months, and what I would like to do is to bring myself up to speed. So I've just popped something here in the input field here. I just want to be caught up on the last few progress notes. So I'm asking Splose AI to help me with that very thing. It's gotten the last few progress notes and it's now giving me a nice little summary of the previous notes that I've gotten in here. I can have a quick read through that right as Emily's walking through the door, and then I can set up what I want to set up in terms of the transcription. So like I was telling you before, it's all accessible behind this nice little microphone button here, and I've got both options to be able to transcribe the session as it's taking place, or I can sans it and instead dictate my notes after. If you're transcribing, I would select the button here once I've captured consent from the client that they're okay with actually using AI, and then I would start the recording here. But to save us both the hassle of going through a real life session, I'm going to just use the dictate function here, and I'm going to upload one that I did earlier just to save us all some mental capacity and some time. So we'll add that in here. It's now transcribed that for me, which is why I've got this nice little purple box that's appeared here. And I can see the transcription has come through. Now, if I had used the multi-speaker version, so if I had selected the transcribe on the left, what it would have given me was an opportunity to be able to assign speaker names to each of the different voices that it had picked up in the room. And I'll only need to assign it just to the first few, and then it'll automatically assign them to the rest, which is really, really great. But I've got a dictation here, which is why it's not giving me that option. I've got the option to be able to play back my recording here, but I don't need to do that, nor do I need to see the transcript because I know what I've said. But instead what I'm going to do is now use Ask Splose AI to help me with my documentation. Now I've got a template here on the left-hand side. It's looking a little empty, so I'd like to have that filled in. I've got one that I prepared earlier in my saved prompts, so I'm just going to use that one for now, and then we're going to get stuck in and talk a little bit about what's in there later. But I've got my prompt here that I've entered. It's gone through basically each of the items that are in the template here on the left-hand side and kind of what I want it to speak through. And I've given it some rules as well about how I want it to write it. Again, we'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but just so you can see how the pieces fit together, I'm going to send that off in the chat. Oh, like clockwork. He's responding already. I've gotten a nice little response here with something that that is ready for me to review and to see whether or not it's something that I wish to put into my note. Let's say it's Mickey Mouse and it's ready to go into my note. I've got a few different ways that I can do that. I can either copy and paste it, or I can just simply copy and paste text, or I've got a few little buttons down here for me. I can copy, or I can just insert it directly to my note. I have decided I'm going to copy it, because what I'd like to do is just pop it here. So now I've popped that in here. Just going to pop that back to normal. And now we can see everything appearing here. So the next thing that I'll show you, we didn't get a chance to talk about in the slides because it was going to be a bit difficult for me to show it to you in a small image. But say if there's something that I want to review in here, something that's not quite right, but also something that, hey, you know what, I'd actually like you to compare something that I saw in a note from a few sessions ago. I can actually highlight a specific thing in here and it will automatically be added as context over here. Now, that's really, really cool because I'm not then having to come in here, copy and paste, and just all the different things that I'm having to do to be able to get further information about a specific thing. I love doing this because 9 times out of 10, AI does a pretty darn good job of getting things near ready. And sometimes it's only just 1 or 2 things that I really just need it to help to dig into just a little bit more. It's kind of missed the clinical aspect part of it. And I'm just giving it a poke and prod. And so this is a really cool way to do that, to say that, hey, most of this is actually fine. And there's just something else that I wish to prod into a little bit more. This is a really nice way to refer to it. So now that that's been selected, I can then prompt into Ask AI here, and I can ask whatever question I like, and can use what I've just highlighted as context for how it responds. So it's a really cool way to do it, a really nice little refinement flow of how you will edit the content that AI has generated. The other way is simply just utilizing the AI chat thread, so you can still refer to anything that it's responded to and it will respond fine. But there's plenty of options there for you depending on what it is that you've got to refine. You've also got the option to just edit the text however you see fit. So that is Ask AI. I've popped that into my note now, and I'm going to save it as final. Go here, save it as final. Everything looks good. I've got a brilliant note in here, which is fantastic. I'm going to now get it ready to email off. I'm going to email that progress note off here. And then I've got that summarize session button that I found earlier. That I showed you earlier. So I'm going to access this button here. Effectively, wherever I put my cursor, it's going to summarize the session and pop that into the body of the email. It's going to do that for me now. Now, if I don't wish to do that, say if I want a little bit more control over how my emails are written, there is another way that we can achieve that. And that is, before you finalize your note, try asking Splose AI to help you craft the email. And this is really good if you're really specific about how much information you want to divulge in the email, or you're really specific about, you want to specify who the audience of the email is. It's being written to a parent, or it's being written to a doctor, or wherever it might be written to. You might want it framed in a certain way. I actually really like using the chat to do that because I've got a bit more control. So before saving it as final, you could prompt AI to help you write an email to accompany it, copy that text, so you can use a copy button on it, save it as final, and then paste that text into the email itself. That is, of course, another way, or you can use the summarize session button. It's chef's choice, so whichever one you choose to do is up to you. The other thing, now that I'm back in here, I realize I forgot to show you earlier, is the trick that I was talking to you about, is if you wanted to do, if you wanted to record your session and also dictate your notes after and use both recordings. I'm just going to demo that for you. So I'm going to remove this for now so I can show you. Let's say, for example, in the circumstance that I was explaining to you before, say you're a physiotherapist and it's going to be a little bit mundane actually just speaking out all the things that you're doing to this poor patient on the table, and they're there going, what in the world are you saying? Anyway, if you don't want to do that, you can still record the context of the session by using the transcribe feature. So still have that happen. Let's do that. Apologies for the transcript that's going to come up, but let's say the session is taking place. We're going through all the different things. It's still capturing all the things that Emily is saying, which is great, because even though it might not directly explain the things that I'm doing, it's explaining the things that she's saying, which is going to be great context for AI. But there's still so many things that were left unspoken, and I really just need that information for AI to know so that it can provide more accurate documentation when it gets to that step. So instead of, when the session's finished, instead of pressing finish, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to press pause. And so by pressing pause, it's obviously paused. I'm going to wait for Emily to walk out of the room, and then I'm going to go, now I'm ready to dictate some notes. I can actually just press play again, and I can start dictating my notes. And so the session's taken place. It did multi-speaker detection while there were other people in the room. But now that it's just my voice, it's still fine. I can still tack that onto the end of the voice recording. So I can then dictate the rest of my notes after here, add that extra bit of context to the AI, explain the things that you weren't able, or it just wasn't practical to explain it to the patient at the time. You can do those things after the fact, and then I can press finish. apologies again for the transcription that's about to show. So I'm gonna hide that. But that is a nice way to actually get the 2-for-1 special, as I like to call it. It's all in the one. All the context is all added all at once, and you get the best of both worlds, which is really, really good. So that's a nice little way to do that. What I might do now is show you letters. Let's hop in here. There's no letters for Emily yet. Let's create one. I've now got a nice little AI sparkle here. My beautiful little AI features are now in letters. And I can utilize the same history for Emily to create any letters. So any referrals or whatever you might need to do, you can use that in here, and you can still utilize the safe prompts like I did earlier. Same as for Ask AI in a progress note, I can do that in letters as well. So I can select the safe prompt with something that was referring to a letter as well. I am going to show you the other way that you can create documentation using AI, and that was using our AI blocks feature. To do that, I could show you here in the progress note, but I'm actually going to show you where you should enter them from and where you're actually going to get the most benefit from them. So I've just switched over to a tab here where I've gone into settings, and I've come over to the template section, and I'm in progress note templates. I'm going to select here a template with AI blocks just to be able to show you. If you've never used AI blocks, you've got a nice little call out feature here where you can add this very template that I'm about to show you to your workspace, which is a really cool way to be able to see it and play around with it for the first time. But I'm going to come in here and edit it. All right, so I've opened up a progress note template here, and I have utilized some placeholders still, because obviously it's very important to just pull in information directly. Never get AI to do a job that other features can do. Don't confuse it. So I've used placeholders still to capture that important information just in plain text. And what I've done here is I've gotten AI blocks and I've popped them into each of the sections of my progress note. Now, don't judge my very, very simple progress note here. I know it's very light and very simple, but that's just for demonstration purposes. But essentially what you can do here is you can have this ready to go in the actual template itself. And so you can write your prompts in here directly. You can't do anything with them here, but once you've opened them in the as a progress note, once you've selected this template to use, you'll get the option to be able to generate them, which is the options that you've got here. So if I come back here, if you want to play around with these for the first time, you can load just on the / command there, or I can go here and I can load from library. And I've got some options in here, but that's because other people in this workspace have created them. But we have some splose created AI blocks where you can actually play around with these in a progress note as well. You can select them and you can add them in, or you can access them from the template like I just showed you. But effectively, it's there to be able to do your documentation far quicker. And I'll show you how that works here. I'm going to... should I add it here? No, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new note with this template. All right, so let's upload my dictation with Emily, for Emily rather. Now I've uploaded my dictation here. I'm going to minimize that. And so rather than going to Ask AI first, what I'm going to do first instead is I'm going to press this generate button. And what that's going to do is it's going to trigger all of these AI blocks in my template here. So I'm just going to generate that there. I don't know what the output's going to be like because this template's not really for, it's not really for physiotherapy, but that's okay. You'll be able to see what it presents. You've got a nice little option here to be able to accept or continue refining any of these responses. And the really cool thing about this is I can go back here and go, you know what, this has completely missed the mark. I'm going to come back in here and I'm just going to edit this prompt. And so I can edit something in here if it's done something a bit whack, or say there's just one thing in here that I'm not quite sure of and I just want to, she wasn't actually that motivated, so it appeared moderately motivated and somewhat proud. I can make those edits directly in here and I can actually accept that directly into my note. which is fantastic. So the really good thing that I love about this is it makes that acceptance workflow of you reviewing the AI's content, you accepting it into your note far more explicit and clear. And it also, it's like, the way that I think of it is it's like a mini checklist of you're going through the different sections of your note and you're almost checking these things off to say like, yep, I've reviewed it. Yep, I've reviewed it. Yep, I've reviewed it. And I think that that's a really good workflow to get into. And our clinicians, they love using it. So if you haven't already had a play around with it, definitely have a play. But let's start to look at what this might look like when you've got a clinic day or a reporting day and how AI can help you in those situations. So kind of alluded to it before, but I might explicitly call it out now instead. So don't laugh at my very simple calendar. Obviously, this is for demonstration purposes as well. Say I've got a calendar where it's not a traditional structure. It's more of I'm on the road on a few days and other days I'm heads down writing reports. What you would want to do is when you're on the road, when you're in a session with someone, you still want to be able to record the session or dictate your notes once that happens. Provided you're capturing that, you can still use that to write your notes later. So like I was explaining to you before, when I came into Emily here and I had this paused, or I could have finished it, it wouldn't have mattered. But either way, when I am coming into my session here, so I've got my one with Emily here, sorry. I'd come in, I would open the progress note for Emily and I would start to record my session straight away. So I'd hit the microphone button and I would start recording. And then once I finished that, I could then leave that for however long I need to between how long of a period there is between here and the actual writing of the note itself. So I can come back to that whenever I need to. And then once I come back, the transcript will be there waiting for me when I'm ready to write my documentation. So that is a really nifty way of doing that. As long as you've got the context there of the actual session, you should be able to sit down and write your notes at any time. The thing I love about this is, I don't know about you guys, but I've got a memory of a goldfish. And if I had to try and remember things from the last hour, let alone the last 24 hours, it's a stretch. So being able to have the fact that the session has been recorded, I can rely on AI to make sure that it's gotten the information from the session that I was expecting to get. And then when I'm sitting down to actually write my notes, I'm not having to try and recall information that had happened. I know that I've got the session transcript there as a trigger to be able to understand what had happened for when I'm going down to write my notes. Now, this is very important, and I am really, really happy to be talking to you guys about this today because we do get a lot of questions about, specifically those that work within the NDIS, how can we use AI to help write about the progression of their goals. And I'm going to teach you a couple tips and tricks on how we can do that. One of them is actually just getting your goals in as custom fields. And what I mean by that is if I come into my patient here, I'm in Lucy Bowler, different to Emily, with another client now. I have gone in and added some custom fields specific to goals. And I've added what her goals are in there. So if you're not familiar with custom fields, definitely go familiarize yourself with them. But effectively, I can add her goals in here. Now I can add as many fields as I need to in here and related to goals. I can add things like the goal due date and all the other bits and pieces that I would need to have. Now I can add these like this. So this is a custom field that I've entered, and so I'm just going to add it to the template here. By doing that, when I open the template, it's going to appear here and it's going to be in context for the AI to draw upon. So say I had my session here. So I'm going to upload my session with Lucy. All right, so I'm going to minimize that transcript now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to access a save prompt that I'd created earlier for this very circumstance. So I've got an OT SOAP note here, and I've asked it to call upon the goals that it finds in this note and to comment on the progression for Lucy. So I'm going to send that off. And the really great thing here is that it's going to do exactly as I've asked. So here we go. So it's called upon each of the goals that were found in the template. It's correctly identified when something wasn't covered in today's session, which is great. I asked it to cover a few things about each of the goals, so to dictate what had actually had happened in today's session, any kind of progress that was made, any kind of next steps that were talked about, and a little about choice and control here. And it's done that for each of the goals. And so utilizing the custom fields to get that information in the first place is a very, very good way of doing that. Another way is if you would prefer, or if you capture your goals with PDFs and you upload those to the client files and you don't want to facilitate the step of adding them as custom fields, you can attach it from the client files here. And you can go and look for the PDF. The PDF's not going to be in here, obviously, but the PDF of her goals will be in here. And what you can do is you can upload it as an attachment when you send the original prompt. And when you're asking AI to fill in that area, you can let it know to say that the goals are present in the actual document that you've uploaded along with the prompt. But you would need to remember to attach it every time that you send the prompt. So the thing that I like about not using the PDF and instead using the custom fields is that I don't have to remember to attach it every time. I know that it's just going to be in the template when I open it. The downside to that is that when I've got the custom fields, so let me just hop over here. When I've got the custom fields, this to work really well and automated, once this goal has been achieved, I would need to override it. And so I wouldn't be able to keep a copy of it in here, but you'd be able to keep a record of what's been achieved if you were to export some of this information and then keep a record of it that way. But for this to work really, really well, it means that goal 1 always has to be the first goal rather than the first goal ever. And so you won't be able to do it sequentially, if that makes sense. So if goal 4 came along and goal 1 was achieved, because goal 1 was achieved, goal 4 would then become goal 1, if that makes sense. So you just need to do whatever kind of works best for you. And whatever makes the most sense, but there are a few different ways that you can get progress towards goals documented on, and this is definitely one of them. The other way as well is if I wanted to use AI blocks, utilizing the custom fields as well, I could put the AI block in here. So I could insert an AI block here, and I could actually just ask for it to search in the current note for the first goal and then to document the same things about that goal. So that's a really cool way to do it because AI blocks have the context of what's actually in the current note as well. And so you can use it to find it that way as well, which is really cool. And obviously AI blocks, you've not got an option to be able to upload an attachment, so it does work quite well doing it that way too. All right, let's start to build some confidence. Let's start to talk about our prompt writing and how to make them a little better and all the different uplift techniques that you can do to make your life a little easier with Splose AI. So the first thing that I think would be really good to do is to talk about what's actually been in some of the prompts that I've spoken to today. And so rather than look at it in here, I'm actually just going to hop over to this nifty little Google Doc. And that way we can have a look at the exact same prompt that I was using before and start to pull it apart a little bit so that we can understand why it was written this way. So the best way for you to achieve more accuracy with less prompt writing is to actually give the AI as much information and context as it needs to write like you. Now, the way that I like to put this is AI is not a junior, but you need to think of it like you are speaking to a junior. So because AI is there to help you write your documentation, it's not a clinician. It's not going to understand how you want to write your notes. So you need to give it as much information as possible for it to be able to do that. So I'm going to take this prompt as an example and I'm going to pull it apart with you guys so you can understand what I mean. I've started here by telling it just very simply what I do and what I specialize in. By simply knowing that, it's going to understand how to tailor how it writes and what it puts priority on when it pulls out things to include. So starting with that is always a winner. The next thing is telling it where you want it to actually look. And I've included here is to what to actually do with one of those things. So I've said, get the previous progress notes from the last 3 months. The greater way to achieve accuracy is to actually tell it what you want to do with those previous progress notes. And for me, what I wanted it to do is before it actually started writing the notes, I wanted it to review those previous notes and understand the patient's history and the treatment progression as context for today's session. So similar to what a clinician would do is, like we did earlier, we got it to summarize the last few sessions so that I could be up to speed. Let the AI get up to speed as well. Give it a step to actually review the past information that's relevant for it. And it's going to be able to help to think like you as well. And then I'm telling it to get stuck into the note. Now, go through a little bit. I'll just jump a little bit down here. For each of the sections of the prompt, I've been really explicit about what it is that I want it to write in it. And what I mean by that is, rather than just saying, write me a subjective section for this progress note, tell it what you want it to include. And bonus points, if you give it an example. Now, this is a very simple example. You're probably going to have far better examples than what I would. But if you give it a baseline to assess its own answer against, it's going to understand what your version of good looks like. So again, back to the analogy of a junior. When you're telling a junior to do something, you are telling the junior not just what to do, but what your definition of good looks like. So do the same with AI. You're going to get better results and more accurate results as it comes through. So don't just explain what it is that you want it to write about, also explain what good looks like. So give it an example of what good looks like. Another bonus is if you allow it insight into how you make decisions on what to include versus what not to include. I realize I just jumped ahead, but I might just put it here. Here we go. So what I've asked it to do is I've asked it to prioritize information from the current transcription over historical data when there are conflicts. Now, you as a clinician, you're going to know to make that trade-off. AI won't. So if that's relative to you, include that in your prompt, because you're going to teach it how to make decisions on how it chooses to prioritize one bit of information over the other. And so I've included that there as kind of like something that will apply to the whole prompt here. But back to my document structure, I've included basically what I described before in each of the sections here. Now, when I came to goals, this is similar to what I was explaining before about using it's very specific to custom fields. So have a read of that if that interests you on how I did that. But the most important part here that I want to call out is the content rules. With the addition of what you should always include with any AI prompt is to not fabricate information, because AI is as superhuman as it's made to seem. It does make mistakes. So I always like to include this in every single prompt that I do, and so should you. But I give it direction on how I want it to write. So here's a type of language that I want you to use. I want you to focus on what the patient can do and then progress towards their goals. I want you to refer to them by their first name. I want you to match the existing template structure. If that's really important to you, you should include that as well. I'll prefer to write in dot points. I prefer to be concise. You might have the opposite, include that in yours. I hate paragraphs. You might love paragraphs, include that in yours. You get my point. So giving it rules about the types of things that you want included in the way that it's being written means that you're spending less time reviewing something that doesn't sound like you and trying to prompt more to make it adjust it in a way that makes it more sound like you. But if you're upfront and clear about that from the offset, you'll receive an output that's far more to your style sooner, which is good. The other thing that I'll mention is, I'll come back to the top of this prompt here, because this is really important. I find that this is always a good check, and I find that this comes up often, is when I find that clinicians are having a problem with the level of accuracy that AI is able to achieve for them, more often than not, they've actually given it a humongous context window. And what I mean by that is, instead of specifying a date range here, what they've said is just get previous progress notes. And that could be like anywhere between 3 to 5 years. That could be hundreds of notes. And you've just overloaded the AI with so much information. It actually doesn't know how to write the note that you need. It doesn't know what to prioritize. It doesn't know how you've interpreted the last 5 years of progress notes. It doesn't know what you want to do with it. You've just given it all of this context and you just said, go do. One of the ways that I find really helps as a good safeguard is if you're finding that you're not achieving the accuracy that you need, try specifying a date range. In fact, this is just a good rule of thumb. You should always specify a date range when it comes to previous notes, because there can be such a long history there. And so the question that I like to ask myself is, context is good, but too much context is too overloading. So how much information does AI need to write the specific note that I'm about to sit down and get it to write? Now, if you're doing a report and it needs access to the last 12 months, so be it. But if you're writing a progress note and all it really needs to know is the last session that had just happened or the last couple of sessions that had just happened, don't let it recall the entire history, because you're going to confuse it. So start by reviewing the time range that you've put here, or lack thereof. And if you've not got one, add one in. The other thing is that if you find that AI tends to make the same mistakes over and over again and they're common, what you can do, I love to do, is I will have a saved prompt that acts like a final step. So I have a prompt, it's not in this workspace, so I can't show you, I'm very sorry. But it is a prompt that effectively acts as like a quality check over the prompt that it's just done. And I'll add it at the end where it's like the final step of what I've asked it to do. And the final step might be like, finally, review after you've and then I could list them out to say, first thing, make sure you always write in Australian English. You'd be surprised how many times it switches back unprompted on its own. So if you find that it does that often, include that in here. And you can include a bunch of things. Like I included something in here to make sure that they refer to the patient by their first name. If they didn't and they slipped up and you're finding that it's doing that commonly, call it up. Go make sure the patient is only referred to by their first name. Sorry, it's exceptionally hard to type when you know that people are watching you, but you get the drift. So you can have a final step check, and it might be for things like make sure that the things that you have said happened in today's session actually happened in today's session, if that's something that sometimes you're finding AI is getting confused with. And sometimes that can happen when you've got a really large context window as well, and you need that large context window, but you're finding that AI is getting confused. Add it in as a final check. You'd be surprised how many times that can work. It's a really good way to kind of just pull AI up on mistakes that you're finding are commonly happening. And the mistakes might be happening because of the prompt that you're using. It might be happening just because of AI in general. But if you're finding that they happen if you're finding that they happen a lot, including this can be really helpful. The next thing that I'm going to go through is something that was actually requested from one of our community members, and that is, what are some of the common pitfalls and mistakes that I see clinicians making with splose AI? I already shared one of them with you just before, and that is not putting a date range on your progress notes and your prompts. The next one is about lazy prompting, which you may have heard that term before. It's not my term, I promise. It's just an industry term. And effectively what that means is your prompt contains perhaps 20 words or less, and you're expecting it to spit out a very nice, nuanced, lovely progress note. It is the term has been coined in the industry as lazy prompting because it is a very, very short amount of information to go off of to produce the thing that you need. If that's working for you and that's producing the level of detail that you need, that's fantastic. But if your prompts look like that and you are finding that you are having trouble with splose AI producing the output that you're wanting, then that for me would be culprit number A. And so I would start to build out your prompts to have a little bit more structure and to start detail the things that we've spoken about like how your writing style is, the types of things that you wanted to do with the information that you're giving it and things like that. On the flip side of that, the other mistake that I see is when we're talking more about really large organizations and they're crafting these incredible, very well-written prompts, by the way, but they're huge. There's so many steps and there's so much things that it wants AI to go through. And when you think about, let's think about a conversation, right? When you're speaking to someone, you're not going to ask 5 questions all at once and then get them to respond to all 5 questions in the same go. You're going to ask 1 question at a time, and then you're going to get them to respond with 1 question. You're going to get them to respond to that question one at a time. I'm going to ask a question, it's going to respond to that question, ask a question, respond to a question. It's a cycle. Now, we talk about AI. AI is obviously a little bit more speedy than us as humans, but the concept still applies. So what I see is that these prompts will contain 100 different things, and it's given it to the AI to do that once, and it's a lot of steps for the AI to take. Try halving it. Try halving it, do 1/2 in one prompt, in one request, let it respond to that information, and then prompt it with the other half, so that at least that way it is able to achieve with a higher performance and more accuracy what you've given it to do, rather than all of those requests all in one. Now, this is actually a pretty simple prompt in terms of instruction, where I can see them get quite long and quite detailed is when we're writing our NDIS reports. Obviously, they're quite long documents. If you're finding that in those circumstances, it doesn't always happen, but in the more elaborate prompts, it can. If you're finding that you're having some issues with accuracy, just try splitting up the task that you've given it in half, and you might find that it can perform it better simply because you've given it less to work with at once. That is just a tip. So yeah, there is a sweet spot with how much you tell AI to do, but yeah, like I was saying, it's not that it's a human. We can only give them one question. They'll give you one answer at a time. It can handle a lot more than that, but there is still a limit in which to how much you can give AI to do at any given moment. So just a nice little tip for you. The last two that I'll talk about kind of go hand in hand. One of them is over-reliance on AI to get it right the first time and not reviewing the output, just getting it to generate the note, copying it into their note and finalizing it straight away. If my company allowed me to use AI, then it's going to trust that it gets it right the first time, right? Wrong. You've got to review the content that it produces across any industry. It doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing. AI can make mistakes. It's important that you view it as an assistive partner rather than the person who is doing the thing that is doing the work for you. So never have an over-reliance on AI to get things right the first time, always going with the understanding that you've got to review it and there might be changes to come after that. It's part of the process. The way that I like to think about it is AI does a really fantastic job of producing a first draft. Sometimes that first draft is like 98% there. Other times it's like 80. It really kind of just depends on the session that's been had, and you've got to be the one to make that call once it's produced what you needed. The other thing is not thinking that AI can make mistakes. Like I said, those two work in hand, but I guess not thinking that AI can make mistakes is quite dangerous. It can quite easily, it can make really obvious mistakes. I've seen AI outside of splose make some glaringly obvious mistakes. It's important to go in with the understanding that that can be the case. Again, think of it in that regard as you use the junior analogy again, where you've got to check the work and just to make sure there aren't a few little niggling mistakes in there. But again, you're in the driver's seat. You should know what you're doing. And yeah, make sure you always review the content before it gets finalized. All right, guys, we are on the home stretch. We are on our final two topics for today. We are going to talk a little bit about security and human oversight just for a short minute, and just talking about the distinction between you as a clinician and AI as a tool. I think the way that I love to think about it, I know that I've been harping on a little bit about it the last 10 minutes, is that AI is like your right arm. It's not like your whole body. It's never there to replace your whole body. It's really there just to help you. So I think that the better that you can apply any of the tips to get the output that it produces first time go as best as possible, I think that's great. But AI is always going to need your clinical judgment and for you to provide the impact to what it's producing. At the end of the day, they're your patient, they're not AI's patient, and I think that's really a really important distinction to make. It still needs your clinical judgment. We have not put anything in our AI to be able to take over that level of clinical judgment for you. It's here to be your thought partner. It is never here to replace you. And from what we spoke about earlier, it can make mistakes because it doesn't have that clinical judgment that you might have as well. So I think it's really important to understand that distinction, and I think there's definitely tips that you can apply to help it produce better drafts, but it is never going to be a one-hit wonder, and it shouldn't as such, because that's you. You're the one-hit wonder. It's just going to help you get there as quickly as it can. But now that we've talked about that, let's talk a little bit about ROI and clinical impact. We got some questions from the community to do with the topics of ROI and splose AI, some to do with how can you measure it, others to do with how can you make sure that you're always consistently achieving it. And look, my personal take on it is that the highest ROI on splose AI is just going to come from knowing that your team are actually using it and benefiting from it. Because I think the numbers of doing a roll call of who's using it and who's not using it can only get you so far as how many people are actually finding value and benefiting from it. So I think that the way that you achieve that is actually just checking in with your clinicians often, and just opening the doorway to have those conversations and give them an opportunity to speak up and say if something's maybe not benefiting them in the way that they thought it would, and providing an opportunity to, I guess, increase their learning and help support them as they continue to grow their skill set in this field. Another good way to ensure that you've got ROI from the offset is, rather than enabling it for your team and leaving them to their own devices, literally, is to set up a nice group session just to commence the topic of splose AI, or just AI in general. Not everyone is going to be really confident with it. And I think that can be really good to set a baseline for what your expectations are for its use, but also help them understand how you think it's going to benefit them as well. Having that initial session is just going to be amazing. We've seen clinics do it, and it's just set a really, really good tone for the topic of AI in the practice. And it's been really good for them to measure and, I guess, open, candid discussions about splose AI. Let them know that they're on the journey with them. The other thing that I've seen clinicians do really, really well within their businesses is I've seen practice owners notice when there's people in their organization that are more AI attuned, and actually giving them the proclaimed title of AI champion. And I think that that's a really cool title to have, because it means that there's someone in the business that can drive the AI conversation forward and it not come from the practice owner. Win-win. It gives them the ability to be able to have peer-to-peer conversations with people. And again, if you've got someone that might be a little bit embarrassed to speak up about how they're finding their experience with AI, can feel a little bit less confronting talking to a peer of theirs rather than talking to the owner of the business. So I think assigning an AI champion is wicked. I've seen other businesses take it a step further and to actually give that AI champion the autonomy to determine how AI can be best used in the practice. So sometimes it might be that they're the ones trialing AI and they're the ones deciding that it's actually good for the business, and then starting to actually put pen to paper on what the safe prompts could be. And by them doing that, it almost creates a doorway to prove to other clinicians that, oh, it is possible and they can do it. And they've started to pave the way for me to do it too. And then they can be responsible for socializing what they're learning and what they're doing with the rest of the organization. It can be really, really good for starting conversations and continuing conversations on AI in the business. It's a really good way, and I've seen businesses do this really, really well, and I think it works fantastically. So if you haven't done this and you think, you've got someone in mind that you think that could be an AI champion in your business, assign it to them and see how it works out, because I think it'd be really good. The other thing is pointing out the obvious, but you can achieve higher ROI by actually just switching to an annual plan. Not a lot of people know that this exists, but when you're in your subscription settings, you've got the same option to switch over to an annual plan for splose AI, the same as what you can do for splose. So you can achieve lower costs and increase savings just by doing that alone. So I had to mention it in here just because some people don't know that it's available to them in there. The other question that we were getting from the community is that should AI be optional or expected? I feel this question in my soul. I get it. AI is an evolving landscape, and it's really come in like a sledgehammer in terms of the expectation to always be using it. Look, we're really biased. We really believe in our why for clinicians and what it can do to help you and, I guess, reduce some of the mental load and burden that is being asked of you every day when it comes to documentation. So we do believe that it should be something that people at least try to put into their workflow. But I think it's worth calling out that adoption is really going to depend on the individual's confidence with technology and AI. And it doesn't mean that they won't ever adopt it or they shouldn't ever adopt it. It just means that they might need a little extra support to get there. I think every industry has kind of been thrown the AI card really hard. And I think some people are going to pick it up really, really easy, and other people, they just need a little bit more. And I love the saying of flowers bloom where you water them. I also love the saying of you achieve more with, you catch more bees with honey. And basically what both of those mean is just if you support them to lift them up and if you support them to lift them up now, you'll allow them to see benefits long term. I think throwing down the card to make it seem like it's expected can be really harsh. I think especially when there is so much changing in the allied health space at the moment. This is just another thing that's changing for them, and all that change can feel quite rough. But I think if you provide support in the right ways at the right time, I think it can really help to open the doorway for them to be able to help them see those benefits. And I guess just knowing that you're on that journey with them can really help, them adopt it a lot better. And that's it. We've done it. We've done the full hour together, guys, and we've hopefully upskilled in a bit of splose AI. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me here. You may be thinking, this information is great, but what do I do next? kind of depends where you're starting from. If you've not ever played with our Splose AI before, a lovely little tip that I love to recommend to people is to create a test client and to start having a play around. And what I mean by test client is not just creating a client in Splose, but giving it some previous note history. So creating some progress notes with some fictitious soap notes in them. And that way, have a play around in the fourth progress note. And so you can start to test some of your prompts. You can start to test a lot of things to do with AI. And then you've not got, you've got the flexibility where you're not having to open a real patient to have a play around. Even if you're not new to AI and you haven't done this, do it. It's really valuable. But if you are already using AI, the first thing that you might want to do is start to revisit your saved prompts, maybe start to refine them and add some of the tricks that we talked about today. If you're an admin, assign an AI champion. If you've got someone in mind, it definitely helps. And if you haven't already had a session with them on Splose AI, I would definitely recommend setting it up. And as always, if you have any questions about making Splose AI work for you, we are always here. But that brings us to the end of our session. Guys, thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time.